everyone, this is Dawn. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make a couple of cards using the Birthday Hugs and Kisses stamp set, and I'm going to be using some of the mix-in papers and a few cardstock colors. So I'm starting out with some white daisy, and I'm going to stamp this birthday sentiment in black ink. It says Hugs and Kisses and Birthday Wishes. So I'm cleaning off my stamp, and now I'm going to cut that panel down. And I'm just kind of going with what looks right, with a little smidge of paper on each side of the image, and I ultimately cut it down to 3 by 2 3/4. So now I'm going to mat that on Smoothie, and so I'm cutting that at 3 by 3 1/4. And now I'm going to start designing the base of my card, and I'm using this piece of mix-in cardstock, and I want to use the peach side with the butterflies, and I'm going to use Smoothie as the base color. So I'm cutting that down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, which is an A2 standard card size. And then I'm going to put a piece of this butterfly paper, and I'm cutting that at 5 1/4 by 4. And now I'm kind of deciding what else I want to add to my card. So this is the zip strip from the top of that pattern paper. And then I decided the base color of this paper was vanilla instead of white daisy. So now I'm going to stamp the sentiment again on vanilla, and then I'll save that other one that I stamped before and use that on the next card. So I'm stamping it again and cutting it down so I have my sentiment on vanilla cardstock instead. And so now it matches the base color of that zip strip. So I'm going to cut that down to 5 1/2, and then I'm going to mat that with the Smoothie patterned paper. I'm just kind of figuring out, a lot of times I just kind of eyeball it and add an extra 1/4 of an inch to whatever size I'm using. So the zip strips are usually a 1/2 inch, so I cut that matting piece at 3/4, and then I'm kind of putting things together, and I could have left it like this, but then I felt like it needed a little something extra, so I'm going to bring in a piece of peach cardstock and make an extra matte color around that zip strip piece. So I'm just kind of figuring out how I want everything to be set up, and sometimes I just cut a little piece down, see what it looks like, and then trim it some more. I can always use those scraps for other things, so it's kind of my process sometimes. I'm not using a pattern, I'm just kind of following the design and shapes of my pieces on the card. So I decided that was going to work. So now I'm going to assemble my card, and I'm gluing everything down with the Bonding Memories broad tip glue pen. So this is just watching me glue everything together. I'm just going to layer everything in there. I like that butterfly paper, it's pretty. I'm just making sure I like my design before I actually glue everything down. And I'm using my mat to kind of figure out where the middle of that card is to put all my pieces down. So this stamp set is available in the March-April catalog, and I'll put a link along with a list of all of my supplies in the description below. So I decided that my sentiment panel needed a little something extra, so this stamp set has really tiny stars and I don't know, it's like confetti squiggles. I don't know what you call them, but so I decided to kind of scatter some of those around the sentiment in Smoothie ink. And get that down, and then I'll start gluing this together. And then I decided it needed some more to kind of balance it out, so I scattered some more of those little images around my sentiment panel. Okay, now it's ready to glue. So I'm going to glue that to the matte piece, and then I'm going to bring in a piece of craft foam and pop up that panel. So I'll get that down, and then I'll set a block on it to let it set up and glue. So I added some crystals after this setup, and then I colored in that banner in the middle with the tri-blend marker in coral, and that's my finished card. So now let's make another one. Okay, so we're going to use the white daisy panel with the same sentiment, and I'm going to use the Build a Plaid stamp set to make a background piece because I couldn't find any that I liked well enough to use with this card design, so I decided to go ahead and make my own background piece. So I'm using my Misty, and I'm setting up that Build a Plaid stripe stamp with at an angle, and so I'm just moving my cardstock around on my Misty and keeping that stamp at the same angle, and I'm kind of figuring out how to space them all apart. So this is just the process of just moving everything around and figuring out where it needs to go and then stamping it down. So I'm going to skip ahead, and I mean, you get the basic idea. So I did all of them at that angle. So I'll get that panel covered, and then I'm going to change my stamp so that it's going the other direction. And I'm using mint ink, and it's a little bit hard to see on camera, but once it's all built up, it looks good. So I'm figuring out what angle I need to have my stamp at, and then I'm going to go through the same process to do the mint stripes in the other direction. Okay, so we have that all built up, and so now I'm going to clean everything up and use another stripe from that Build a Plaid set, but this time I'm going to put it on a block because now I have the angle of the diagonal, and so I can build on that. Sometimes when you're doing things at a diagonal, it's hard to keep it at the same angle, so that's why I like to use my Misty, but then once I have everything down, I can go in with my block and it goes a little bit quicker. So you'll see with this one. Now I'm using Bluebird, and I'm going to go in with a thinner stripe and add it to my other ones. So I'm just going to get everything stamp down to build up my background panel. I'm going at that direction, and then I'll flip it and go at the other direction. I love this stamp set. It's sometimes it takes a little time to put together a panel, but I love the results every time I use it. So this stamp set is available in the core catalog. I'm going to get everything cleaned up here. So I'll put a link as well for this stamp set, and it's available until the end of August. Okay, so let's build a card. And I'm trying to decide if I want to use that other piece of mix-in paper. So I'm going to cut down my background piece that I stamped so that it's cut at 4 by 5 1/4. And then I'm going to mat it on an A2 size of Bluebird at 5 1/2 by 4 1/4. So it has the Bluebird panel around it, and then I'm going to mat my sentiment panel as well, the same way that I did the other card. I'm going to use the same basic card design for both cards. So I'm getting that set up. And then I'm still deciding if I want to use that mix-in piece. And ultimately I decided it wasn't going to work. So I'm going to make my own because I couldn't find any zip strips that would match either. So I'm going to mat everything with a piece of mint cardstock. So I'm cutting that down. I'm deciding if I want to use the dark side of the mint paper or the light side. So this is kind of my process. I just put things together and see what I like and just keep going. So now I decided that since I didn't have a zip strip that I liked, I was going to make my own. So I got a piece of White Daisy cardstock, and I'm going to use this diagonal stripe stamp, and I'm going to stamp that in Bluebird. So I'll get that down. And then I'll trim that down to have just a little bit of white around it. And that'll be the piece that goes down the middle of the card underneath the sentiment strip, or underneath the sentiment panel. Okay, so I'll start building my card. Need to trim that to 5 1/2. So this one, I'll build it the same basic way, and I'm gluing it with the broad tip glue pen. I'll get that glued down with my background piece. That's a good thing about the broad tip glue pens. It's forgiving. Sometimes you need to adjust and you have that second to be able to take things apart. Now I'm marking the center of this one because it's a little narrower and not quite so easy to eyeball, so I get it in the center. And I ultimately decided to use the light side of the mint cardstock. I'm getting that put down in the middle. And then the piece that I just stamped. And the sentiment piece. I stamped some stars and little confetti around it like the other card in mint ink off camera. So I'm going to layer that with a piece of craft foam. And then after everything's set up, I colored in the middle banner with a mint colored tri-blend marker, and I added some Nuvo drops in Midnight. And that's my completed card. I appreciate you taking some time and watching my video today. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button, and thanks for watching.